All right, everyone. Steve Metrics here of Db8 Sports. Going to be me flying solo for majority of the show tonight. My guy, DJ TRIGGS, going through some health issues at the moment. Our thoughts are definitely with him, and hopefully things go well and he's with us later or he's with us on tomorrow's show. So thoughts out to you, DJ TRIGGS. Really hope you're doing well, man. So with that, we got to keep the ball rolling. We got our show tonight, and we're picking up from week 9, going over all the games and what we see going on tonight with Monday Night Football with the Chargers and the Jets. So right out of the gate, week 9, we had our Thursday night action with the Titans and Steelers, and some pretty cool stuff going on there. Definitely not as explosive as when Tennessee was playing against the Atlanta Falcons. And that's pretty much how it works with going up against Pittsburgh Steelers, especially at Pittsburgh. They are really, really good against rookie quarterbacks, notoriously, especially in the last decade or so. So taking Will Levis after that great situation he had against Atlanta and going up against Pittsburgh didn't work so well. Pittsburgh brought the house. They brought a ton more pressure than Atlanta did the previous week. So even in this game where Will Levis is making good progressions, good reads, still has that cannon of an arm, you can't utilize it if you're under duress and you're scrambling, trying to make a play, all that kind of stuff. So it didn't really go as well for Will Levis in this game as it did the previous week. So looking at that, his completion percentage definitely took a hit. He pretty much went down from, I want to say it was at about 80 last week to about 50% this week. Still had a good amount of yardage, 260, had the one pick in this game as well, but he definitely had a ton of pressure. He was sacked 4 times in this game. Just really, really tough outing for him. But they did what they could. It wasn't as ugly as that box score looks, but it was still a pretty tough game for Will Levis and the Titans. Derrick Henry still managed to do what he did, and I think we're going to see more of that going forward. So with the cannon of the arm that Will Levis has, there's going to be more attention to that, knowing that he can get it to a Nick Westbrook-Akine, and especially a DeAndre Hopkins, whether he's in the slot or lining upside. That attention, that respect has to be granted. So it's going to lighten up the box and give Derrick Henry more space to work with. With that, I think we're going to get a lot more 70-yard plus games. And even in this game, he still had a score against Pittsburgh. So Derrick Henry could easily be one of the better backs moving forward. We even saw more shiftiness out of Tyjae Spears in this game. Granted, he had a few runs when Derrick Henry wasn't on the field, but he even lined up outside a few times in this game as well. So I definitely like the Batman and Robin kind of scenario that you have with Henry and Tyjae Spears moving forward. I think that's going to be very dynamic. Pittsburgh continues to win in very ugly fashion. They are a 5-3 football team, but is it really looking like a 5-3 football team? I don't think so. I just don't think they have that real firepower to last throughout the season. There was even a George Pickens touchdown that was called off because he couldn't get that second foot inbounds. So a little tough sledding there. Pittsburgh is 5-3, but Kenny Pickett's banged up, still not playing well. And man, it just feels like Kenny Pickett just isn't making it happen, whether it's that offensive line. He can make the progressions, but it's rough. It's really rough. I think Deontay Johnson's the real guy here. As long as that guy's healthy and out there, he is truly the number one. So it can be a little tough for fantasy owners, whether it's Deontay or Pickens. But are we really getting that explosiveness from both the quarterback and the wideouts? Not so much. So a little tough there. So got that, and that's what we're seeing out of Tennessee and Pittsburgh tonight, or from last week. So let's go to another game that's going on, and let's go to that first game that played on Sunday. So if we look at the Chiefs and Dolphins playing in Germany, and you thought it would be a higher scoring game, but not so much, right? So Kansas City has that relentless defense that Spagnuolo brings, that he brings all that pressure when you really least expect it. And it's very tough for these teams to deal with. So, and that really showed. If Tua Tagovailoa doesn't have that time in the pocket for a play to develop and have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle get open, it's more than likely not going to happen. Then it puts more weight on the run game as well. So, with that being the case, you had more production out of Mostert. You had the touchdown. You had 85 yards rushing out of him. But Waddle was kind of banged up, and Tyreek Hill did his thing. But the costly turnover by Tyreek Hill is what really ultimately decided this game. So Kansas City still has some wonkiness going on offense, unless they're playing against a team that's just brutally bad on defense that they're familiar with, like the Chargers. It's still looking weird. So Mahomes still not looking all that great. Travis Kelce was completely bottled up. But for as good of a linebacking core that Miami had against Kelce, the wideouts really wreaked havoc in this game. And it's a shopping list. And Mahomes totally spread it out to these guys. So you have pretty much 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You have 8 targets outside of Travis Kelce in this game. So pretty impressive. Jerick McKinnon is always one of those guys who can kind of run those routes similar to Kelce and get open. He's not going to give you a ton of yardage, but he will give you that production at the goal line. So for any McKinnon owners out there, if you feel that Kansas City can get to the goal line and do some damage, maybe that's when you pick your poison with him. But little shiftiness, still a little tough with that offense. The high point that I like out of Kansas City still is Isaiah Pacheco. The way that guy runs, the way that guy cuts through holes, and the way he runs with power is still very impressive. So I like what we got going on there with that. All right, so the next game we're going to, the Vikings and the Falcons. So if we look at this game, this was a game where Josh Dobbs gets traded literally a week ago, has less than a week to get acclimated with his teammates in Minnesota, still have no Justin Jefferson. You had the starting quarterback for this game who did okay in Jaron Hall go down almost immediately. So immediately Josh Dobbs goes into action. So he does his thing. He makes it happen against the Atlanta Falcons, a tough secondary, but was able to make it work. Got over 100 yards passing, 158, not the greatest, but got the 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Just a very consistent game out of him, and a completion percentage that is kind of close to 70. So that's pretty much that benchmark that we like here at No Debate Sports, and he is making that happen. So I like what you got going on there. I like seeing that out of him, and pretty good stuff. So pretty impressive there. And on the Falcons side, they switch it over to Taylor Heineke. He is definitely rough. They cannot figure it out at that quarterback position in Atlanta. And I think this is why things are probably starting to shape up for New Orleans. DJ Triggs' pick to win the South. And Heineke's got a 50% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He's always a guy who kind of runs it on the ground. He did so for 20 yards in this game, but pretty rough all around for those guys. So a little tough there, and just wasn't the greatest showing out of Atlanta. And I think that's what we're going to get out of this team. We're going to get a team that plays some gritty games, but is not figuring out offensively. And that's going to allow more defensive players in the box against Bijan, and it's going to be rough sledding moving forward. So a little tough there. So that's what we got. And yeah, let's see what happens. But looking at the Vikings real quick before we leave this game, with Minnesota, Jordan Addison has been, or no, actually KJ Osborne took a concussion, got hurt, has already been part of this offense with Justin Jefferson being down. Now Powell gets the game-winning touchdown from Josh Dobbs in this game. So keep your eye on Brandon Powell if you need a receiver moving forward. especially in this high octane offense, Powell is totally a great guy to look for in the waiver wires moving into week 10. So there we go there. And yeah, so let's look at the next game, and we'll go to Cleveland. Cleveland against Arizona. So Arizona now turning over the page away from Josh Dobbs. And this is a team that has a brutal secondary. Nobody outside, nobody in the slot. You have no quarterback concerning Dobbs has moved out of that city to Minnesota. And now Cleveland has one of the greatest defenses in the league. They have their quarterback in Deshaun Watson back, and they pretty much have everything else cooking for them on offense. And this game was a complete blowout, just top to bottom, 27-0, not a single point out of Arizona. No David Johnson there already, no quarterback. So you have no run game, no pass game. That's Arizona, and Cleveland keeps it going. So got to see some good production out of Deshaun Watson, 200 plus yards, 2 scores. Their defense is kind of good in Arizona. We saw them kind of hold back Baltimore for a little bit last week. So that kind of happens with the ground game of Arizona, but the secondary just totally keeps giving up a ton of yardage. And Amari Cooper really proved that. Over 100, almost 140 yards receiving and a score outside. And yeah, that's the way it works. Those number one receivers against Arizona pretty much always have their way. So that's what we got there with Cleveland and Arizona. So we got that there. Next game we're going to go to is Washington and the Patriots. So you have a Washington team that's kind of shifty, kind of scoring a lot of points lately, putting up a lot of yardage. Going to New England, a tougher defense, a tougher secondary to go up against. We know how bad that offensive line is for Washington, but yet Sam Howell still continues to get it done. So we're talking in about 2 weeks, the guy has thrown for almost 800 yards. That's pretty impressive. He's got a touchdown in this game, 1 interception, completion percentage close to 70. So that's starting to look better. The run game out of Brian Robinson, solid. And when we're looking at the receiving side of things, you got Scary Terry and Jahan Dotson pretty much even on yardage, but Dotson gets the score in this one. So looking pretty good there. The New England side, especially when it comes to rushing, you got Ramondre Stevenson getting it done, almost 90 yards on the ground and a score there. And Mac Jones looks brutal, man. He has his ups, he has his downs, but the Patriot way is clearly no more. So not going so hot there with that group. And they show they are 2-7. They are a real rough looking squad. And speaking of the Patriot way being no more, let's go to my Raiders. And the Patriot way has been completely cleaned out of house with Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler, and I want to say Mike Lombardi, the former OC, all getting canned. And right from the get-go, you could already tell there was a different vibe, a different momentum going on with this team. You got to see Josh Jacobs run for almost 8 yards a carry every single time he had the rock. So he almost had 100 yards on the day. He had 2 touchdowns. Pretty cool there. You had a Jacoby Myers touchdown with a jet sweep outside to start the game. So really cool there. Really good momentum out of the gate. And then pretty much just put some field goals out there towards the end of the game. We really weren't able to get into the end zone, but just putting those field goals at the end of the game still just kind of kept that game out of reach. Unfortunately, Daniel Jones tears his ACL in this game. Pretty rough sledding there. And I would say right now the Giants probably at this point are one of the worst looking teams moving forward because they are working with a 3rd string quarterback here on out. So losing Tyrod Taylor, losing Daniel Jones, really putting this team in a tough spot. But even Jalen Hyatt got hurt in this game. Hyatt had some real opportunities to do some damage early, and he's an awesome deep threat. I love watching Hyatt play. So kind of unfortunate there, but That's kind of the way it goes. So that's what you had there. And let's go to Carolina. So Carolina and Indianapolis, some teams that could have been some early pick matchups between the quarterbacks, but instead you got Gardner Minshew against Bryce Young, and definitely not the greatest quarterbacking day. And Bryce Young throws multiple pick sixes in this game, and that pretty much carries that Indianapolis offense throughout this game. So you got that. You also now have Jonathan Taylor truly taking over the offense. He is now the number one running back, and he is, on top of that, putting his receiving game into action. So he catches a touchdown pass, he catches for 22 yards total, and then he runs for about 50 yards on the ground. So just all around a real solid day for Jonathan Taylor, showing now that he is one of the best running backs that you can count on in the National Football League. So it's a bummer that it took a good 4 weeks for it to 6 weeks for it to really happen. But he's here now, and we'll see if Zach Moss owners decide to hold on to him, or do they release him if you're in fantasy? And does that Jonathan Taylor owner pick up Zach Moss and want to have that protection moving forward? So a little tough, a little interesting there, but it is what it is. So we got that going on. Right now, just want to take a quick shout out to the Monday Night Football game going on. So we got the Jets and the Chargers. This is pretty much a battle for who's going to have that leg up on that final wild card spot, should either of these teams have a shot at it. So Jets have been pretty clamoring to these very lower scoring games. And if they keep it close, their defense can do what they do at a great level that allows Zach Wilson to pretty much just make a few handful of great throws, and they can win a game. And the Chargers are one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. You can just throw on them for days. I know they rank at the absolute bottom for total yards or yards per attempt. So pretty rough with them. But they have this offensive firepower. I think the biggest thing playing with them that I like about the Chargers is now that Austin Eckler is back. So now you have a big piece that is back in that lineup that can do a ton of damage. And right here, just watching the game, just saw Sauce Gardner just absolutely swat away a pass in man-to-man coverage. I want to say with Quentin Johnson. So pretty cool stuff out there from Sauce. But that's how this game is going to be. Pretty much if the Chargers are going to win this, I stick to my game plan that they need to utilize Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, and the tight ends. Work the middle of the field, work the slot position. And I think them taking a ton of shots downfield outside is not going to go so well. So that's probably not the strategy to go with this. So that's what's going on there. And let's get back to these games. So speaking of a cool game that had some explosiveness, let's go to Houston, where the Buccaneers were playing against the Texans. And in this game, you got Baker Mayfield playing kind of so-so, kind of okay. But going on the other side of the ball and really looking at CJ Stroud with Houston, CJ Stroud is truly showing himself now as being one of the number one quarterbacks in the entire NFL. Very few guys in the league have put up these kind of numbers. This is now a 470-yard game from Stroud with 5 touchdowns. We know his run game isn't as impressive. So it's not the greatest run game that he has in Houston. He has had kind of a tough offensive line throughout the season, but is starting to make it happen. And this is the real cool. Wow. Oh my goodness. This is absolutely insane from CJ Stroud. So Noah Brown is up there. He's probably the boy with Noah Brown. I think he's probably one of the at this point, he's the number one slot receiver from Houston. So when we look outside now, the way they're stacked, it's got to be Nico Collins outside, Tank Dell outside, and Noah in the slot. And then the other player in the slot is obviously the tight end, right? So between Dalton Schultz and Noah Brown, they combined for 283 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's absolutely mind blowing. And then outside, Tank Dell, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. And even outside, Nico Collins goes for 54 and a score. So absolutely insane with how this team is stacked offensively, and every single component of that passing game absolutely just went off. So if you had Texans in this game, your line is looking really, really solid. So I would definitely say for moving into next season, if you can get CJ Stroud as your quarterback, it's going to be a great decision moving forward, because he's only going to get better with a better offensive line and more threats at the running back position. So pretty cool there out of him. So Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield's probably still not looking like the guy. Still rough with him. I mean, not the worst day, but still not one of those great days that you need out of him, especially against a Houston team that is really just explosive and really cooking on all 8 cylinders. Biggest part of this game, actually, you had 2 big parts. In the receiving game, it seemed like Baker's always been more of kind of an inside intermediate kind of passing guy. So his tight end, Cade Otton, really starting to do some damage. 70 yards receiving, 2 scores. And then on the running side of things, that Rashad White can also be kind of one of those targets that Baker likes. He gets 73 yards receiving and 2 scores. And Rashad White almost caught for 50 yards as well. So really cool stuff there. And quick shout out to the Chargers and Jets game. Looks like they had a kick return for a touchdown. Yep. So you got that going on there. So we got Chargers up 7 on the Jets 0. So got that going on there. And where are we going to next? Let's see. Let's see what games we got going on here. You know what? Let's check out some of these later afternoon games, actually. So one of the games going on in the afternoon, big game going on, NFC East showdown between the Eagles and the Cowboys. Pretty cool game. And this is a game that you got Philadelphia at home. They're pretty tough to beat at home. But the thing is, they don't really allow the run, and they're really not one of the greatest secondaries in the NFL. Dallas is a team that's really starting to cook in the passing game, but the run game isn't really starting to work. So it's almost like the perfect storm for Dallas to pull the upset in this game. And with Dak Prescott playing a whole lot better now, it's starting to come to fruition. And the stat line on Dak Prescott in this game is perfect. It's exactly what we're looking for. It's basically 70% completion percentage, over 300 yards passing, and 3 touchdowns, no picks. Perfect. That is a beautiful stat line out of Dak Prescott. And he made it happen. He made it work. His number 1 receiver, CeeDee Lamb, almost caught 200 yards receiving out of the slot in this game. And outside, also in the slot, you had Jake Ferguson, a big tight end out of Wisconsin, replacing Dalton Schultz. Caught a touchdown, 90 yards receiving on the day. Jalen Tolbert outside caught a score as well. A little bit of Michael Gallup action, but very little going on in the run game as expected against Philadelphia, who's incredibly stout against it. But Philadelphia just wins in these grimy kind of games, and maybe taking away that fumble from CeeDee Lamb helps contribute to that. But other than that, I mean, you just got a lot of good going on with Philadelphia in this game. Not great, but good. So A.J. Brown, about 66 yards and a score. Devontae Smith, 50 yards and a score. Goddard, just 50 yards. And then You got some DeAndre Swift action receiving and catching, but still rough on the yardage lately. And he had that trouble last week as well. So you got that going on. Jalen Hurts, not the greatest day out of him either, and but did have some production on the ground. So he'll get you pretty much right out of the gates. He'll get you 10 yards on the ground from having to score and rushing for about 36. But when we look at the rest of his day, that puts him at 207 yards receiving, so we'll call that 8. And then 2 touchdowns on the day, which is another 8. So 16 plus 10, 26. That's a pretty good looking day overall as a quarterback. So it is what it is. And I mean, the completion percentage is probably at about 34, 60. It's about 70. Yeah, it's about 70%. So it's a solid day between the completion percentage, the not having a ton of yardage throwing, and only 2 touchdowns. It's about where it should be for that kind of day. And considering he did have that production on the ground, so that kind of allows them to do more of a ground and pound kind of style of the game against Dallas to get the W. So it's different. It's not the conventional stat line like we see out of Dak Prescott, but it is a winning stat line. It's a stat line out of Jalen Hurts that is going to rival the exact same, well, not the exact same points scored out of Dak Prescott, but with a different stat line. So pretty cool there going on with the Cowboys and the Eagles. So hopefully we get to see that showdown again. We get to see it again in Dallas. Maybe it's in the playoffs as well, but these are definitely 2 of the best teams in the entire NFC. So pretty cool stuff going on there with those guys. So we got that. And let's go to another big game later that night with Buffalo and Cincinnati. So this game being in Cincinnati, being that Damar Hamlin return game, the game that got canceled in early January, tough stuff going on there. But what you had going on with this game is what I have started to theorize about the Cincinnati Bengals, that with Joe Burrow playing at the excellent level that he's playing at now that he's fully healthy, and how Cincinnati is outside, that I think this is a tough team to catch once they get ahead of you. I think there's very few teams in the NFL that can be in a deficit against Cincinnati and overcome it. And Buffalo is definitely not one of those teams. So you pretty much had out of Buffalo, you had a really good day out of Stephon Diggs, 86 yards and a score. You had Dalton Kincaid in the slot for 81 yards, but it looks like when it comes to everyone else receiving, that's it. So it puts everything on the arm of Josh Allen then. And Josh Allen turned the ball over as well. So that is another thing that is making life a little bit easier for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I don't know. I keep looking at Buffalo and I keep seeing them being a truly one-dimensional team, a team that basically will only win from just taking the top off their opponent immediately. But even against a Cincinnati with a quarterback as good as Josh Allen, doesn't have that firepower to get themselves back into a game. And Joe Burrow totally took care of business. You got about 70% completion percentage, over 300 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and some solid stuff on the ground out of actually not the greatest. But you do have Joe Mixon rushing for a score, and your receiving game is pretty solid. Jamar Chase really had some tough pressure, took a real hard hit landing on the ground later in this game. And T. Higgins was pretty much the guy. So he was pretty much that threat outside opposite Jamar Chase. And other than that, you pretty much had your tight ends doing the damage once they got closer to the end zone. So both Drew Sample, Irv Smith, they both get the scores, and that is enough to carry Cincinnati to the finish line. So pretty good stuff there out of them. And we'll see how Cincinnati is moving forward. They have a very tough schedule. I still think, too, especially at the end of the year, that game against against Cleveland is going to be very meaningful, very impactful. And it's a game that I think Cleveland can do what they did week 1 as well. So it's a tough schedule Cincinnati has coming up, but we'll see what happens out of those guys. So pretty cool stuff going on there. So we got that, and I think okay, we got a few games left. So one of the games going on in the afternoon, I was watching it, kind of fading in and out. It was not the easiest game to watch, but it was what it was. And looking at this game, this would be the Ravens against the Seahawks. And I thought this game was going to be a closer game, a more competitive kind of game. I thought these teams are similar to each other, and kind of weird game, and it still gives me a pause of concern for Baltimore. They're 7-2, their defense is excellent, I get it, but this is a weird team to watch. There's been very few touchdowns out of Lamar Jackson this season. I want to say he's only had 9 touchdowns in 9 games. Really weird. You actually had a touchdown coming out of Tyler Huntley in this game, so it's bizarre. It's a really weird game going on here. Keaton Mitchell is your leading rusher, yet Gus Edwards still has 2 scores rushing. So pretty odd. Pretty odd day. Odell Beckham gets a score, but there was just nothing that felt like Baltimore is really taking the top off the opponent. Like, it is all ground and pound, great defense, ground and pound, do your thing. And that's how they win. I was expecting more out of Zay Flowers in this game against Seattle, considering that this would be a good way for them to attack that and get Zay Flowers really more integrated into this game. But when you look at Seattle, Devin Witherspoon's an excellent nickel corner, and it really looks like he shut down Zay Flowers in this game. So it happened there, and Seattle pretty much was completely incompetent in this game against Baltimore's defense. Geno Smith had a terrible game, no rushing whatsoever. Jackson Smith and Jigba leading receiver in this game, so I like that. I like the progression that we're seeing with him. So JSN is probably a really nice pickup in leagues if you can get him and see how he is moving forward. So we'll see how Seattle rebounds, but I would expect they're not going to play as many teams that are as stout as Baltimore moving forward. So take that for what it is and make what you can from that. So we'll go from that game. We got a few games left here. One of those games is the Bears against the Saints. And like I was talking earlier about Atlanta, I think now the Saints are truly coming into their own, that this is their division. They should be the team to win the South, make the playoffs, and I think it'll happen. And I think it will happen because they have a great defense. You're seeing how Alvin Kamara is such a great part in this offense, and you're starting to see more Taysom Hill involved as well. So I liked what we saw out of him. He threw for a touchdown, ran for a good 50 yards on the ground as well. I think he caught some passes as well. Yep. Yeah, he even caught a touchdown. So he threw a touchdown, caught a touchdown, ran for some good yards. Taysom Hill being the Swiss Army knife in this game is pretty cool. So I love what you got going on there. On the Chicago side of the ball, Tyson Bagent really ain't getting it done. Tough yards throwing the ball, and a lot of interceptions going on with him in this game. So not the greatest. It is great seeing Deontay Foreman back. And you also saw a ton of production out of Cole Kmet, who is definitely one of those best tight ends in the league, especially for fantasy. So 2 scores out of him, but just not enough to get it done against this tough New Orleans Saints defense. So got that going on there. And last game we got on the slate that I was hoping our guy DJ TRIGGS could join us for. But what we're looking at here is the Rams against the Packers. And the big thing with Green Bay is they are pretty much not good against the run. And we've seen it in multiple games in the past. And I was expecting with Matt Stafford being banged up that he would probably not be, well, he wouldn't be playing in this game, and that they would lean more on the run and get it done on the ground. but they couldn't. Just very little production whatsoever. Royce Freeman and Darrell Henderson pretty much split carries. Neither of them get any production going in this game. And then Green Bay, in pretty much just a ugly kind of fashion, takes over and wins this game. So it is good seeing Luke Musgrave bring in his, I want to say his first touchdown on the year. And Aaron Jones really getting back into action is good. So you got that. You do have much better completion percentage out of Jordan Love, so I like seeing that. About 80% out of him. Only one touchdown on the day, but it looks like they had a very blue-collar kind of ground and pound approach, play good defense like they did, and that's solid. That's good enough to get there. So that's what it took from these guys. You had no passing whatsoever out of Brett Rippon. So pretty much this offense revolves around Matt Stafford, the receiving core they have, and that has to get there. And now the Rams are just really rough looking forward. This used to be a team that I once thought could have been 5-1. They are now 3-6 on the year. Just really tough sledding out of these guys moving forward. Green Bay bounces up to 3-5, but are they going to keep pace with Minnesota and Detroit? We'll see. So I don't feel as confident in that one. So that's pretty much everything we've got for the games for Week 9. Got some more Jets, Chargers stuff going on, but that's pretty much what we got. So hoping things are going well with our guy DJ TRIGGS. And we'll hopefully have him joining us tomorrow. So be sure to come back tomorrow. You can check us out 7 o'clock every Monday, Tuesday here on YouTube, Twitter, X, and Facebook. So you can see us live on all 3 platforms. And we'll be back here tomorrow. So for that, I'm Steve Metrics of No Debate Sports, and that's No Debate.